Get up. You don't belong here. Go back to economy!
A flight attendant. Crestline Airways. The woman held up her pass.
Seat 2C, it's mine.
You look poor. What'd you do? Swipe some old man's credit card?
2 passengers laughed. The rest looked away.
I'm calling security. They'll drag you to economy. Trust me, nobody here is gonna stop them.
The woman didn't move, didn't blink. 14 passengers heard every word. Not one spoke. But the man in 3A, gray hoodie, cap pulled low, he saw all of it. Every word, every look. And when that plane landed, that attendant wished she'd never opened her mouth. Let's go back to the beginning. Atlanta. Hartsfield-Jackson International. Gate B12. 6:15 in the morning. Wanda Edwards walked through the terminal the way she walked through everything in life. Unhurried, unbothered, upright. 62 years old, retired 3rd-grade teacher. 35 years in the same school district. She'd taught over 1,000 children to read, write, and believe in themselves. Today, she was flying to Chicago for her son's birthday dinner. She wore a soft cream cardigan, comfortable slacks, reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. Her carry-on was a leather bag, worn at the edges, but she loved it. Her students had pooled their money and given it to her the day she retired. She'd never replaced it. Seat 2C, first class. She'd saved for it herself, $2,400, because her son had told her once, "Mama, you've spent your whole life giving. Let someone take care of you for once." So she did. She boarded, found her seat, settled in, tucked her bag under the seat in front, folded her hands in her lap. That's when Brenda Collins appeared, lead flight attendant, 15 years with Crestline Airways. Blonde hair pinned tight, smile that clicked on and off like a switch. She walked toward Wanda, and the smile vanished before she even reached row 2. She looked at Wanda's cardigan, her bag, her reading glasses, and she made a decision, right there, before checking a single thing. "Ma'am, can I see your boarding pass?" Voice flat, no warmth. She held the pass up to the light like she was checking a counterfeit bill. "This is probably a system error. Let me verify with the gate." Wanda smiled politely. "No error, ma'am. I booked it myself, 3 months ago." Brenda walked away without a word. Meanwhile, a young man in a gray hoodie and a baseball cap boarded quietly. Seat 3A. He sat down, pulled his cap low, and looked out the window. Brenda walked right past him without a second glance. Nobody paid him any attention. They should have. When Brenda came back, her tone had changed. Colder. Louder. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step aside." Passengers looked up, and this is where things started to go very wrong. Brenda didn't ask again. She announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the delay. We have a seating issue that needs to be resolved." She said it the way someone talks about a stain on the carpet, like Wanda was a problem that needed cleaning up. Greg Sullivan, the junior flight attendant, stood behind her, 26 years old, 2 years on the job. He kept his eyes on the floor. He already knew what was happening, and he already knew he wasn't going to stop it. Brenda turned to Wanda, didn't lower her voice, didn't try. "Ma'am, I've contacted the gate. There's a discrepancy with your booking. I'm going to need you to move to economy." There was no discrepancy. She never called the gate. Wanda looked at her, calm. "There's no discrepancy. I have my confirmation email. I have my receipt. I can show you right now." Brenda didn't blink. "That won't be necessary." "Then what's the problem?" Brenda smiled, that same cold smile. The problem is that this seat is reserved for a passenger who actually paid for it. And frankly, ma'am, I don't believe you did. The cabin was silent. Wanda reached for her phone. Let me pull up my confirmation. You'll see the receipt, the booking date, everything. I said that won't be necessary. Brenda's voice went hard. I've been doing this job for 15 years. I know what a first-class passenger looks like. She paused, let her eyes travel from Wanda's cardigan to her leather bag. And I know what one doesn't look like. A man in row 4 leaned to his wife, whispered, She's probably using somebody else's ticket. His wife nodded. Nora Patterson sat in 1A, white, mid-50s, tailored blazer. She watched everything. Her hands tightened around her armrest. She said nothing. Nobody did. Greg stood behind Brenda like a shadow. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other. He could feel it, the wrongness of it. But Brenda was lead crew. She ran this cabin, and Greg had learned early, you don't challenge Brenda Collins. Not if you want to keep flying. Brenda picked up the intercom. Security to first class, please. We need assistance with a passenger. Wanda's face didn't change, but her hands, folded in her lap, pressed tighter together. That was the only sign. Ma'am, you don't need to call security. I'll show you my booking. I'll show you my ID. I'll show you whatever you need. What I need, Brenda said, is for you to stand up and move. I have a right to sit in the seat I paid for. You have a right to cooperate. That's what you have. Derek Hollis arrived. Airport security. Big shoulders. Stern face. Trained to follow crew instructions first, ask questions later. He looked at Wanda, then at Brenda. What's the situation? Brenda straightened up, professional voice, clipped. This woman is refusing to vacate a seat she's not authorized to occupy. I've asked her multiple times. She won't comply. Derek turned to Wanda. Ma'am, I need you to come with me. Sir, I have a valid ticket. I paid for this seat. I have proof. Derek hesitated. For 1 second. He looked at Brenda. Brenda looked back at him with the confidence of someone who had never been questioned in her own cabin. That was enough for him. Ma'am, please stand up. Wanda stood. She didn't fight. She didn't shout. She collected her bag. She reached for her reading glasses, but they slipped from the seat and fell to the floor. A man in row 4, the same one who whispered, saw the glasses land near his shoe. He looked at them. He didn't pick them up. Wanda waited for a moment. Then she bent down and picked them up herself. Derek walked her up the aisle, past every row in first class. 12 passengers, 24 eyes, all watching a 62-year-old woman carry her own bag down the aisle because a flight attendant decided she looked too poor to sit there. Nobody said a word. Nora Patterson in 1A watched the whole walk. Her mouth opened slightly, like she was about to say something, then closed. She looked down at her lap. And then something happened that Brenda didn't notice. When Derek guided Wanda past row 3, her phone slipped from her cardigan pocket. It hit the carpet. The screen lit up. The lock screen showed a photograph. Wanda, in an elegant black gown, standing arm in arm with a man in a tailored navy suit. A gala. Crystal chandeliers behind them, both of them smiling. The phone sat there, face up, glowing. Brenda stepped right over it. Didn't look down. Didn't care. Greg saw it. He picked it up. He stared at the photo for a moment, then slid the phone into his apron pocket. He'd give it back later. But he didn't recognize the man in the photo. Not yet. Nobody did. Wanda was placed in row 34, middle seat, 34B, between a teenager with headphones and a man already asleep against the window. The overhead bin was full. Her leather bag, the one her students gave her, got shoved under the seat in front. She had to press it down with her foot to make it fit. She sat down, smoothed her cardigan, folded her hands the same way she always did. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just sat there with the kind of stillness that comes from a lifetime of swallowing things she shouldn't have had to swallow. 35 years of teaching, 1,000 children who called her Mrs. Edwards, a woman who taught dignity for a living. And they dragged her to the back of the plane because of how she looked. Back in first class, Brenda remade seat 2C. Fresh pillow, clean blanket. She smoothed the headrest like she was erasing something. She turned to Greg, satisfied. See? That's how you maintain standards. Greg said nothing, but his jaw tightened, and in his apron pocket, a phone screen still glowed with a photograph that would have changed everything. If anyone had bothered to look. The cabin settled, seatbelts clicked, conversations resumed. Like nothing happened. That's the thing about silence. It doesn't just let cruelty happen. It tells the victim they imagined it. It tells them they don't matter enough for someone to speak up. Wanda mattered, but nobody in that cabin acted like it. In first class, Brenda worked the aisle like she owned it. Champagne for 1A, sparkling water for 2A, hot towels, warm nuts in a porcelain bowl. She moved with the easy confidence of someone who had just won. She passed row 3. The man in the gray hoodie sat still, cap low, arms crossed. He hadn't ordered a drink, hadn't pressed the call button, hadn't said a single word since boarding. Brenda barely registered him. Hoodie or not, he was already seated when she started her shift. His boarding pass had scanned clean. She had no reason to look twice. That was her first mistake, not looking twice. She stopped at Greg, who was restocking the galley cart. "You're quiet today." Greg didn't look up. "Just doing my job." "Good. That's what I like to hear." She lowered her voice, not by much. "You saw her, right? The woman? You could tell she didn't belong. I don't care what her ticket said. I've seen enough to know when someone doesn't fit." Greg swallowed. "She had a valid pass, Brenda." "A pass doesn't make you first class." She tapped her temple. "This does. Experience. Instinct. I can spot a fake from 20 feet. She wasn't a fake. The system confirmed. The system glitches all the time. You've been here 2 years. I've been here 15. Trust me." She smiled that switch smile. "I just saved this cabin a very uncomfortable flight." Greg closed the cart, locked it, said nothing else. In his apron pocket, Wanda's phone sat like a small burning coal. In row 34B, Wanda sat perfectly still. The teenager next to her had his headphones on so loud she could hear the bass. The man by the window shifted in his sleep, his elbow pressing into her side. The middle seat, the tightest spot on the plane. The place where you disappear. She thought about calling someone, but her phone was gone, dropped somewhere in first class. She hadn't noticed until she reached for it. The battery was almost dead anyway, cracked screen from the fall. She had no phone, no proof of purchase in her hands, no one to call. Brenda had made sure of that. Not on purpose, maybe, but the result was the same. Wanda was alone, cut off, invisible. A flight attendant from the economy crew passed by. Young woman, friendly face. Wanda raised her hand, gentle, like she used to raise it in her classroom to get the children's attention. "Excuse me, is there someone I can speak to? A supervisor?" The attendant leaned in. "About what, ma'am?" "I was moved from my seat. First class, seat 2C. I believe there's been a mistake." The attendant's face shifted, uncomfortable. "The lead attendant, she said the situation was handled." It wasn't handled. It was wrong. The attendant looked toward the front of the plane, then back at Wanda. I'll see what I can do." She walked away. She didn't come back. Wanda waited. 5 minutes. 10. 15. Nobody came. But someone noticed. A young black woman across the aisle. College age, natural hair pulled into a puff, textbook open on her tray table, had been watching since Wanda sat down. She'd seen the way Wanda folded her hands, the way she held her chin up, the way she breathed, slow and controlled, like someone who'd practiced keeping calm in rooms that weren't built for her. The young woman reached into her bag, pulled out a bottle of water, unopened. She leaned across the aisle. "Ma'am, would you like some water?" Wanda looked at her. For the first time since she'd been moved, something in her face softened. "Thank you, baby." She took the water. Their fingers touched for a second. The young woman smiled, small but real. That was it. One bottle of water, one moment of kindness in an entire plane full of people who couldn't be bothered. It was the only act of decency Wanda received that morning, and it came from the only person on that aircraft who looked at her and saw a human being instead of a problem. Back in first class, Nora Patterson stared at her champagne glass. She hadn't taken a sip. She kept replaying it. The crumpled boarding pass, the walk down the aisle, the reading glasses on the floor, the way nobody moved, the way she didn't move. She told herself what people always tell themselves. It's not my business. I don't know the whole story. Maybe there was a real issue with the ticket. Maybe Brenda was right. But Brenda wasn't right. Nora knew it. She'd watched the whole thing from 3 feet away, and she knew, deep in the pit of her stomach, that what happened had nothing to do with the boarding pass and everything to do with the color of that woman's skin. Her finger hovered over the call button. One press. That's all it would take. One sentence. I saw what happened. That woman had a valid ticket. She pulled her hand back. She picked up her champagne, took a sip, looked out the window. And just like that, Nora Patterson became every person who's ever watched something wrong happen and told themselves it wasn't their place. The plane pushed back from the gate. Engines hummed. Atlanta shrank beneath the clouds. In row 34B, Wanda Edwards stared out past the sleeping man's shoulder. She watched the city she'd lived in for 40 years fall away beneath her. 35 years. 1,000 students. Report cards and parent conferences and early mornings and late nights. A life built on teaching children that they matter, that their voice matters, that nobody has the right to make them feel small. And here she sat, in a middle seat she didn't choose, stripped of a ticket she paid for, surrounded by strangers who didn't care. She closed her eyes, not to sleep, just to stop seeing. The seatbelt sign turned off. The cabin relaxed. People opened laptops, ordered drinks, leaned their seats back. Wanda didn't move. She sat in 34B with her hands in her lap. The same way she sat at her desk for 35 years. Straight back, chin up, hands folded. Like posture could protect her from what just happened. It couldn't. The teenager next to her pulled out a bag of chips, crunched loudly. Crumbs fell on the armrest between them. He didn't notice, didn't care. Why would he? To him, she was just another passenger in a middle seat. He didn't know she'd been dragged here. Wanda needed her phone. She needed to pull up the confirmation email, the receipt, the booking code. Proof. Cold, hard, undeniable proof that she had paid for seat 2C, that she belonged there. But her phone was gone, somewhere in first class, on the floor, in someone's pocket. She didn't know. All she knew was that when she reached for her cardigan pocket, it was empty. No phone, no email, no receipt. Without it, she was just a woman in economy with a story nobody wanted to hear. She thought about pressing the call button again, asking another flight attendant, demanding to speak to whoever was in charge, but she'd already tried. The economy attendant had promised to come back. That was 20 minutes ago. Nobody came. And then she saw Brenda walking through the aisle between first class and economy. Not working, just walking. Slow, hands behind her back, like a guard doing rounds. She looked at the economy passengers the way a hotel manager looks at a parking lot, beneath her, but part of the territory. She passed row 34. Her eyes found Wanda, and she smiled. Not the switch smile, something worse. A satisfied smile. A smile that said, "I put you here, and here is where you'll stay." Wanda held her gaze. Didn't look away. Didn't flinch. Brenda kept walking. Wanda decided right then she would not press the call button. She would not beg. She would not give that woman the satisfaction of seeing her ask for anything. She had been a teacher for 35 years. She had broken up fights between children twice her size. She had talked parents out of rage. She had held kindergartners while they cried, and never once let them see her own tears. She knew how to survive a room that didn't want her. She'd been doing it her whole life. But surviving isn't the same as being okay. Wanda's chest was tight, not pain, pressure. The kind of pressure that comes from holding everything in because there's nowhere safe to let it out. She pressed her thumbnail into her palm. An old habit. Something she did during parent-teacher conferences when someone's father told her she didn't know what she was talking about. When a school board member questioned her curriculum. When someone looked at her credentials and said, "Are you sure you're qualified for this?" She was always qualified. She always had to prove it twice. The young woman across the aisle, the college student, glanced over again. She could see it. The tightness in Wanda's jaw, the way her breathing had changed. Shallow, controlled, too controlled. She didn't say anything this time. She just sat there, present, witness. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes it isn't. In first class, the mood was easy, comfortable. Passengers were eating warm meals on real plates, drinking from real glasses, watching movies on screens the size of small windows. Seat 2C sat empty. Fresh pillow, clean blanket. Nobody had taken it. Brenda hadn't reassigned it. She'd just cleared it, like erasing a name from a chalkboard. Greg Sullivan stood in the galley. He had Wanda's phone in his apron pocket. He'd picked it up off the floor after she was escorted out. He told himself he'd return it. But when? How? Walk it back to economy and hand it to her in front of everyone? He pulled it out. The screen was cracked, a long fracture running corner to corner from the fall. But the lock screen still glowed. The photo. Wanda in a black gown, the man in a navy suit, chandeliers behind them. Greg stared at the man's face. Something about it, something familiar, but he couldn't place it. He slid the phone back into his pocket. He should have looked harder. Nora Patterson had finished her champagne. She was on her second glass now. She told herself the alcohol was for the turbulence. There was no turbulence. She kept thinking about the reading glasses, the way they fell to the floor, the way the man in row 4 looked at them and didn't pick them up, the way Wanda had to bend down and collect them herself. Such a small thing. Reading glasses. But it was the detail that stuck. Because picking up someone's glasses, that costs nothing. It requires nothing. No courage, no risk, just basic human decency. And nobody could manage it. Nora's finger found the call button again. She pressed it halfway down, felt the click, then released it. She picked up the in-flight magazine, opened it, stared at a page about vacation resorts in the Caribbean. She didn't read a single word. 25,000 feet below, the country scrolled by. Fields, rivers, small towns, big ones. In row 34B, Wanda Edwards looked past the sleeping man's shoulder and watched the clouds. She thought about her classroom, room 14, second floor. The poster by the door that she never took down, not in 35 years. Yellow paper, blue marker, her handwriting. Every person in this room matters, no exceptions. She had read that sentence to every class, every first day, every September, 1,000 times. And she had believed it, truly believed it, every single time. She believed it now, sitting in a seat she didn't choose, on a plane that didn't want her. She still believed it. But there was someone in first class who was already making sure this story wouldn't end here. The man in 3A had barely moved the entire flight. No drinks, no meal, no movie. He sat with his arms crossed and his cap low. The flight attendants had offered him the menu twice. He declined both times. Polite, quiet, forgettable. That was the point. Somewhere over Kentucky, he reached into his hoodie pocket, pulled out his phone, dialed a number, spoke one sentence, low enough that only the passenger across the aisle caught a few words. "Get me the crew manifest and service record for this flight." Then he hung up. The passenger across the aisle, a man in a business suit, glanced over. Curious, who talks like that on a commercial flight? Who requests crew files at 30,000 feet? He looked at the man in the hoodie, young, black, calm. No briefcase, no laptop, just a phone and an expression that gave away absolutely nothing. The businessman shrugged, went back to his movie. He didn't think about it again. But that phone call had just set something in motion that nobody on this plane could stop. Not Brenda, not Derek, not the 14 passengers who sat in first class and watched a woman get dragged out of her seat. The landing was 45 minutes away, and everything was about to change. The plane touched down at Chicago O'Hare at 9:42 a.m. Smooth landing, gentle braking, the kind of arrival that makes people clap sometimes. Nobody clapped today. The seatbelt sign dinged off. First class unbuckled first. That's how it works. You pay more, you leave first. You get your bag first. You breathe fresh air first. The hierarchy of an airplane is not subtle. Brenda stood at the cabin door, back straight, smile on. The switch smile, the professional one. The one that said, "Welcome to Chicago. Thank you for choosing Crestline Airways. I am a model employee. Thank you for flying with us. We appreciate your loyalty." She said it to every passenger who passed. Same voice, same rhythm, like a recording. 1A, Nora Patterson. She walked past Brenda without making eye contact. Her jaw was tight. Her champagne buzz was gone. She clutched her carry-on and moved fast, like the quicker she left, the less responsible she'd feel. It didn't work, but she tried. 2A, the businessman who'd whispered about stolen tickets. He nodded at Brenda. "Great flight," Brenda beamed. "Thank you, sir." Row by row, smile by smile. Brenda processed them like inventory. Then the man in 3A stood up. He moved slowly, no rush. He reached into the overhead bin and pulled out a plain black backpack, slung it over one shoulder, adjusted his hoodie, pulled off his cap. He was tall, mid-30s, clean-shaven, the kind of face that was easy to overlook when it was hidden under a baseball cap, but impossible to ignore when it wasn't. He walked to the door. Brenda was waiting with her script. "Thank you for flying with..." He stopped. Right in front of her. Didn't step off the plane. Didn't move aside. Brenda's smile faltered. "Sir, is there a problem?" Yes. His voice was low, even, the kind of voice that doesn't need volume to fill a room. "There is." He reached into the front pocket of his hoodie, pulled out a small leather case, flipped it open. A Crestline Airways executive ID badge. The photo matched his face. The name read, Tyler Edwards, Chief Executive Officer. Brenda's eyes dropped to the badge, then up to his face, then back to the badge. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. The color left her face like someone had pulled a plug. Tyler didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The woman you removed from seat 2C, the one you called poor, the one you had security dragged to economy in front of 14 passengers. He paused, let it land. That's my mother. The words hit the cabin like a pressure change. 2 passengers still gathering their bags froze mid-reach. Greg Sullivan, standing behind Brenda in the galley doorway, went white. His hand moved instinctively to his apron pocket, where Wanda's phone still sat. Brenda's mouth moved. Mr. Edwards, there was a discrepancy with the booking. I followed standard. There was no discrepancy. Tyler's voice didn't waver. I checked. Her booking was confirmed 3 months ago, paid in full, seat 2C. You never called the gate. You never checked the system. You looked at a 62-year-old black woman and decided she didn't belong. He took one step closer. Not aggressive, just close enough that Brenda had nowhere to look except his eyes. That was your entire investigation. Brenda tried again. Sir, Mr. Edwards, I was following protocol for— There is no protocol that says humiliate a paying passenger because of how she looks. I wrote our protocols. I would know. Tyler turned to Derek Hollis. The security officer was standing near the galley, arms at his sides. He looked like a man who had just realized the ground beneath him was not solid. Officer, did you verify her boarding pass before you removed her? Derek straightened. The lead attendant informed me. I didn't ask what she told you. I asked what you did. Silence. Did you check the system? No, sir. Did you call the gate? No, sir. Did you ask to see her confirmation email, her receipt, anything at all? Derek swallowed. No, sir. I relied on the crew's assessment. Tyler nodded. Slow. You relied on the crew's assessment. A woman with a valid first-class ticket told you she paid for her seat. She offered proof. And you chose to believe the person in the uniform instead of the person being removed. Derek said nothing. There was nothing to say. Tyler pulled out his phone, dialed a number, put it on speaker. He held it up, not for Brenda, not for Derek, but for the 6 passengers still in the cabin, frozen in the aisle with their bags half lifted, watching something they would never forget. 2 rings. Tyler? A woman's voice, brisk, professional. Claudia Reeves, VP of Operations. Claudia, I need an immediate suspension and full service review of the crew on Flight 342, Atlanta to Chicago. Start with the lead flight attendant. What happened? I personally witnessed a passenger removal based on racial profiling. The passenger had a valid, confirmed first-class ticket. No system check was performed. No gate verification. The removal was conducted publicly in front of the entire cabin with security escort. I have it on video. A pause on the other end. Then, understood. Effective immediately. I'll have the paperwork within the hour. Thank you. He hung up. The cabin was so quiet you could hear the jetway humming. Brenda hadn't moved. She stood at the door, the same door where she'd smiled and thanked passengers 30 seconds ago. And she looked like someone who had just watched her own career walk off a cliff. Her lips trembled. Mr. Edwards, I didn't know she was your— That's the problem. Tyler's voice was quiet, almost gentle. Almost. You didn't know she was anyone's. You looked at her and decided she was nobody. He held her gaze for a long moment, then he turned away. Greg Sullivan stepped forward. His face was pale, his voice cracked. Mr. Edwards, I was there. The whole time. I should have said something. I saw her boarding pass. I knew it was valid. And I didn't say a word. Tyler looked at him. No, you didn't. Greg reached into his apron pocket, pulled out Wanda's phone. The cracked screen. The lock screen photo, Wanda and Tyler at the gala. He held it out with both hands like he was returning something sacred. I picked this up after she was taken out. I should have done something then. Tyler took the phone, looked at the photo. His mother's smile. His own face next to hers. Chandeliers. A night when she'd told him she was the proudest mother in the world. He put the phone in his pocket. He didn't thank Greg. He didn't need to. Then Tyler did something nobody expected. He turned around and walked back into the plane. Not toward the exit, not toward the terminal. Back. Through first class. Past the empty seat 2C with its clean pillow and fresh blanket. Past the galley. Past the curtain that separated the people who paid more from the people who didn't. Into economy, row by row. Past the families and the backpackers and the businessmen in wrinkled suits. Past the college student with the natural hair who had offered his mother a bottle of water. She looked up as he passed. Their eyes met. He nodded. A small nod, barely visible, but she saw it. Row 34. Wanda sat in the middle seat, hands folded, bag crammed under the seat in front. She was looking down at her lap when a shadow fell across her. She looked up, and there was her son. Tyler knelt beside her seat, right there in the aisle. The CEO of Crestline Airways on one knee in a gray hoodie in row 34 of his own airline. Come on, Mama. Let's go home. Wanda's eyes filled. Not sadness, not anger. Relief. The kind of relief that only comes when someone finally shows up. She took his hand. He helped her stand. He pulled her bag from under the seat. He picked up her reading glasses from the tray table and hung them gently back on the chain around her neck. Then they walked. Up the aisle. Through economy. Past every row. Past the teenager with the headphones who never knew what happened. Past the sleeping man. Past the college student who was crying now quietly with her textbook still open. Through the curtain. Into first class. Past the empty 2C. Past Greg, who couldn't look up. Past the galley. Past the door where Brenda still stood, motionless, arms at her sides, watching the CEO of her airline walk his mother off the plane she'd been dragged through like she was nothing. Tyler didn't look at Brenda as he passed. He didn't need to. The look on her face said everything. They stepped onto the jetway. Wanda's hand gripped her son's arm, tight, the way she used to hold his hand when he was 5 and crossing the street. Behind them, the cabin sat in total silence. Nobody clapped this time either, but for a very different reason. Tyler didn't post the video. That's the first thing people get wrong when they hear this story. They assume he went straight to social media, blasted Brenda's face across every platform, let the internet do what the internet does. He didn't. He sent the footage, 3 minutes and 41 seconds of it, to Crestline's internal compliance team. Encrypted, time-stamped, chain of custody intact. Because Tyler Edwards didn't build his career on outrage, he built it on process. And process is what burns slowest, but leaves nothing standing. Within 6 hours, Crestline's legal team had reviewed the footage. Within 12, they had pulled the security logs from Flight 342. Within 24, 3 things happened. Brenda Collins was formally suspended, badge deactivated, flight privileges revoked, pending a full internal investigation. Derek Hollis was placed on administrative review, not for following instructions, but for failing to perform the one job he was trained to do. Verify before you act. Greg Sullivan requested a voluntary reassignment. He walked into his supervisor's office the morning after the flight and said 5 words. "I can't fly that route." He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. Crestline Airways released a public statement at 4 p.m. Eastern, 48 hours after Wanda Edwards was dragged from her seat. Crestline Airways does not tolerate discrimination in any form. We are conducting a full review of crew training procedures and protocols. We are committed to ensuring that every passenger, regardless of background, is treated with dignity and respect. Standard language, corporate boilerplate. But what happened next was not standard. Tyler called an all-hands meeting. Every employee at Crestline's Chicago headquarters, operations, ground crew, flight staff, management. 400 people in a conference hall on a Tuesday morning. He didn't use slides. He didn't bring notes. He stood at the front of the room in a navy suit, the same one from the gala photo, and told them a story. "My mother's name is Wanda Edwards. She taught 3rd grade for 35 years at the same school in Atlanta. She taught over 1,000 kids to read. She made $41,000 a year at her peak. She never complained. She never asked for more. She just showed up every morning and did the work." He paused. 3 months ago, she called me and said she wanted to come to Chicago for my birthday. I told her I'd send a ticket. She said no. She wanted to buy it herself. First class. She'd never flown first class in her life. She saved for 3 months, cut her grocery bill, skipped her book club dinners. $2,400. The room was silent, and when she boarded that plane, our plane, one of our employees looked at her cardigan and her old bag and decided she was too poor, too black, too wrong-looking for first class. He let that sit. That employee crumpled her boarding pass, called security, had her escorted, walked through the entire first-class cabin, and placed in a middle seat in row 34, in front of everyone. And nobody, not the crew, not the passengers, not the security officer, nobody stopped it. Tyler's voice hadn't risen once. It didn't need to. Every word hit like a stone dropped into still water. I was on that plane. I watched the whole thing. And here's what I keep thinking about. If my mother, the woman who raised me, the woman who made me everything I am, if she can be treated like she doesn't belong on our own airline, then we have failed. He looked across the room. 400 faces. Not her. Us. The investigation moved fast after that, and what it found made everything worse. Brenda Collins had 3 prior complaints. 3. All from passengers of color. All filed through Crestline's customer feedback system. All marked resolved internally. The first was from 2 years ago, a black businessman in first class. Brenda had asked to see his ID twice and moved him to a different seat because she said his original assignment was under review. It wasn't. The second was 14 months ago, a Latina woman traveling with her daughter. Brenda had questioned whether the child's ticket was real. The woman had produced every document imaginable. Brenda still called the gate. The gate confirmed the tickets were valid. Brenda never apologized. The third was 9 months ago. An elderly black man, a retired judge, flying first class to his granddaughter's graduation. Brenda had suggested he might be more comfortable in economy. He moved without protest. He filed a complaint when he landed. The complaint was logged. No action was taken. 3 complaints, 3 passengers. 3 times the system caught it. 3 times the system did nothing. Until Wanda Edwards sat in seat 2C, and her son happened to be in 3A. The disciplinary action was specific, public, and final. Brenda Collins was terminated from her position as lead flight attendant. 15 years. Gone. But not entirely. Crestline offered her a path. Complete a mandatory 6-month equity and inclusion training program. Serve in a ground service role during that period. Submit to quarterly performance reviews. Only after completion and full assessment would she be reconsidered for any flight duty. It wasn't a slap on the wrist. It was a structured consequence. A door left open, but barely, and only if she walked through it honestly. Nora Patterson, the woman in 1A who watched everything and said nothing, contacted Crestline's customer service 3 days after the flight. She wrote a formal statement, 4 pages, single-spaced. The last paragraph read, "I sat in seat 1A and did nothing. I watched a woman get humiliated, removed, and paraded past me. I had every opportunity to speak. I chose silence. I am ashamed of that silence. And I want it on record that what I witnessed was not a booking error or a system glitch. It was cruelty." Nora Patterson didn't have to write that letter. Nobody asked her to. Nobody would have known if she hadn't. But she did. 3 days late. Better than never. Barely. 2 weeks after the flight, a reporter asked Tyler Edwards a question during a shareholders' call. "How has the PR incident affected brand perception?" Tyler paused, long enough for the silence to mean something. "It wasn't a PR incident. It was a failure, and we own it." Wanda watched the clip that night, sitting in her living room in Atlanta, her retirement chair, her reading glasses on, her leather bag hanging on the hook by the door. The same one her students gave her. She called Tyler afterward. Didn't mention the shareholders, didn't talk about Crestline, didn't talk about Brenda. She said, "I didn't raise you to punish people. I raised you to fix what's broken." Tyler was quiet for a moment. Then, "I know, Mama. So fix it." 6 months later, Crestline Airways rolled out a new program, company-wide, mandatory. Every flight attendant, every gate agent, every ground crew member, every customer-facing employee in the organization. They called it the Edwards Protocol. Not the Tyler Edwards Protocol, the Wanda Edwards Protocol. She insisted. "My son runs the airline," she told him. "But I'm the one who sat in 34B. Put my name on it, so they remember who it's for." Tyler didn't argue. He knew better. The first training session was held in Crestline's Chicago headquarters. 200 crew members. A conference room with too much fluorescent light and not enough windows. Folding chairs. Paper name tags. The kind of room where people expect to be bored. They weren't. Wanda Edwards walked to the front. No podium, no microphone, no slides. Just a 62-year-old woman in a cream cardigan and reading glasses, standing in front of 200 people who wore the same uniform as the woman who had dragged her off a plane. She looked at them the way she used to look at her third graders on the first day of school. Patient, direct, no nonsense. "I'm not here because of what happened to me." She let that land. "I'm here because of what happens to people every day who don't have a son who's a CEO. People who get looked at and judged and moved and silenced. And nobody ever finds out. Nobody ever comes back for them. Nobody calls the VP on speakerphone." She paused. "The woman in Seat 34B didn't need saving. She needed you to do your job." 200 people. Nobody moved. Brenda Collins completed the training. All 6 months of it. Ground service duty, quarterly reviews, bias awareness modules, de-escalation workshops, role-playing exercises where she had to stand in a cabin and watch someone else get treated the way she treated Wanda. That was the hardest part. Not the classes, not the paperwork. The watching. After the program ended, she wrote Wanda a letter. Not a corporate apology, Not the kind of letter a lawyer reviews before it's sent. A personal one. Handwritten. 3 pages. She wrote about growing up in a small town in Ohio, about a grandmother who used words Brenda won't repeat, about a house where certain people didn't belong in certain places, and how that phrase was as ordinary as saying grace before dinner. She wrote about 15 years of flying first class and how she'd built an entire system in her head, who belonged and who didn't, based on nothing but how people looked. She wrote, "I never questioned it, not once. Not until I became the villain in someone else's story." Wanda read the letter in her living room, read it twice, set it on the table next to her reading glasses. She didn't respond immediately. 3 weeks later, she sent a short reply, 6 sentences. The last one read, "I've spent my life teaching. If you learned something, that's enough." Greg Sullivan transferred to Crestline's training division. Voluntarily. Took a pay cut. Didn't care. He now helps facilitate the Edwards protocol sessions. He opens every class the same way, same words, same pause before he says them. "I'm here because I watched something wrong happen and said nothing. Don't be me." He never misses a session. Nora Patterson joined a travelers' rights advocacy group in Chicago. She volunteers twice a month at an airport legal clinic, helping passengers who've been removed from flights, denied boarding, or mistreated by airline staff. She doesn't talk about Flight 342 often, but when someone asks how she got involved, she gives the same answer every time. "I was the woman in 1A who didn't speak up. I'm trying to make up for it." The Edwards protocol is now in its 3rd cycle. Over 1,000 Crestline employees have completed it. Complaint rates from passengers of color dropped 41% in the first year. 3 other airlines have requested access to the curriculum. Wanda's poster, the one from room 14, yellow paper, blue marker, was reproduced and framed. It hangs in every Crestline crew lounge in the country. "Every person in this room matters, no exceptions." Her handwriting, her words. 35 years old and still teaching. Seat 2C. That's where it started. 1 seat, 1 ticket. 1 woman who was told she didn't belong. A flight attendant looked at her cardigan, her bag, her skin, and decided, in 3 seconds, that she was nothing. But Wanda Edwards was never nothing. She was a teacher, a mother, a woman who spent 35 years telling children they mattered, and meant it every single time. And here's the thing about belonging. It was never Brenda's to decide. It was never the cabin's to vote on. It was never up for debate. Belonging isn't a ticket class. It never was. Drop your answer in the comments. If this story made you feel something, hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe, because the next story might be even harder to hear.
Brenda lost her badge, Rick transferred, no real role for paid confession, but Wanda, she told Tyler one thing: "I didn't raise you to punish people, I raised you to fix what's broken." 35 years teaching kids they matter, $2,400 saved from a teacher retirement, just to sit in a seat she never sat in before, and when that seat was taken from her in front of 14 silent faces, she didn't budge. She folded her hands the same way she always did. Because here's the thing, dignity is not something someone can hand you, which means it's not something someone can take. Brenda took a seat. She never touched Wanda's dignity. Today, Wanda poster hanging every Crestline crew lounge. Yellow paper, blue marker. Every person in the room master, no exceptions. Complaint dropped 41%. 1,000 employees trained, and the program carried her name, not Tyler's, hers. But here's the question that can only be alone. 14 people what? Not one spoke. So I got to ask you, when you witness something wrong, does your silence make you innocent, or does it make you part of it. Drop your answer in the comments. If this story stay with you, subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because belonging was never a ticket class, it never was.